Thank you very much for clicking on this virtual presentation of the MICF, the Malawi Innovation Challenge Fund, and our response to COVID-19 crisis and how you as a business could apply for a financing in Malawi for this crisis. My name is Buddhika Samrasinga. I am the project director of the MICF, and I'd like to thank you for your time in listening through this presentation. So before we start on exactly what are these windows and what they will be doing, let's just go through what are the common characteristics of this fund and what are we looking to do. Well, as a donor finance fund, we're providing grant finance to businesses so that we can align your commercial interest with the development interests and the interests of supporting and nurturing the country through this crisis, and to develop and strengthen the supply chains, which will be so crucial going forward. But it's not like any other development instrument in that it tries to harness the strengths of the private sector. It understands that the private sector is good at generating new ideas, but also very quick when things aren't working to stop and try different things or to scale up things which are working. We are looking at innovation because ultimately innovation will determine what happens and how deeply we can engage with our supply chains, either SMEs or producers, and how effectively we can engage in markets, both domestic and regional. Grantees are expected to provide some form of financing or co-financing to go along with the MICF financing. And so this is what we will be looking for, and I'll get to that later. The MICF has been around Malawi for a considerable period of time. It started in 2014, but we have always had one clear goal, and that is that we are looking for innovative ideas, things which are a bit outside of the box, but we're not here to develop your capacity as implementers. What we need is that you are willing to take the risk and co-finance with us to test something new. The instrument follows a set of very clear guidelines set by our donor partners, which is UNDP and the German Cooperation Programme through KfW. The fund is allocated through a transparent process. That means it's open to all who qualify our set criteria. And you can see our eligibility criteria under our website, which is at www.micf.mw. So anyone who qualifies and meets the eligibility criteria can apply. We have marketed this so everybody is aware of this fund. And it's a competition. It's a competition of ideas and approaches, which could be new, which could be different. It's done on a transparent selection criteria, and the criteria is selected by an independent panel, not the fund managers and not the donors. There are multiple rounds. These are rounds 7 and 8 of the Malawi Innovation Challenge Fund, which have been hugely successful. And we have more applications than there are funding possibilities. So what we've tried to do is to avoid you spending a lot of resources and time by first having a very simple form that you have to fill in, a 6-page form called the project concept note. You don't need much resource for this, and it can be done very, very quickly and efficiently. If you get to the next stage, which is a full proposal, that's much more complicated, but then your chances of winning are far greater. There's roughly a 50-50 chance of getting a grant at that moment. So we have a very clear competition. And we, as a donor and a donor financed instrument, have to also have an exit from your project. So We provide one-off financial contributions, and those are done by milestones. And the milestones are very, very simple and very clearly articulated in the contract. Once you hit the milestone, we pay. And when you hit the final milestone, that means your business is successful and we exit from it. And you can continue commercially sustainable in the future. So the idea is we have transparency, we have a competition, and we have a very clear exit. So we get a lot of questions about what do we mean by innovation? Because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. I think at this pyramid tries to demonstrate what it is. Right at the top, it's a new product or service or approach that has not been tried anywhere. And this is something that we will, of course, love to have, but we're realistic enough to understand that this is not always possible. What is more possible is a product, service, or approach that may be new to Malawi, or in some instances, a product, service, or approach that has not tried or been tested in the specific sector that you are looking at. And so each of these is valid. And we do not discriminate against one against another, but it is important that you consider how innovative your project is. So let's talk about the windows that are available for financing right now. The first is a financial outreach window. This is available for banks, microfinance institutions, and non-bank financial institutions, looking at how do we support the SME sector in particular during this crisis, and how can we use technology and approaches to increase lending to the SME sector, the viable SME sector prior to the crisis that we want and need in the country. So if you're interested in this window, you have to address one of two challenges. The first challenge is looking at cash flow and operational financial needs of growth-orientated SMEs. This means that we're looking at supporting through innovative initiatives firms which have an immediate cash flow need but were viable prior to the crisis. And in this way, by allowing them to have access to finance, we protect jobs and the businesses. The second challenge is to support digital financial transactions, again for SMEs which are growing or stable and that are financially viable. So we're looking at increasing the availability of credit, mobile money facilities, to look at how transaction costs can be reduced so that lower ticket items can be reached to this type of business. The total amount of grants that is being awarded under this window is between 200 and 500,000 US dollars. But we understand as financial institutions that you may, in this crisis, not have an ability to match our contribution with yours. So in this instance, we're looking at a minimum contribution of 30% of the total cost of the project, which is expected to last for 24 months. Your contribution can be a combination of cash and investment, but also can be in terms of existing assets which are relevant to the project. If you're in doubt, please contact us and we can explain in further detail. So just to be clear, what do we mean by SMEs, small and medium enterprises? We're using the Ministry of Trade and Industry definitions for that. A small enterprise is between 5 to 20 employees. A medium enterprise is between 21 to 100 employees. We see that we're not specifically looking for micro enterprises, which we understand will require a completely different type of support, and one which probably the Micf through this instrument is probably not best to deal with. I also want to just touch on what the grants can be used for and what they can't be used for, so that everyone is very clear. I think what they can be used for is pretty much most things that a project of this nature would look at. For instance, it could, and these are just examples, so they're not the end all of anything. Is they could be used to look at internal processes. They could be looking at piloting new products which cater for the SMEs. You could look at linkages within BDS providers, financial institutions, to lower transaction costs and to engage with the SME sector. And of course, you could look at digital financial services and digitization of processes to increase new financing products to SMEs. What we don't and would not really recommend and would consider invalid for this round would be that you use the grant as a subsidy on interest rates to SMEs, that you're just basically using the grant as a collateral substitute to underwrite the risk of the product. So basically, in the case of default, you will use our money to recover the capital and the principal. Those are the kind of two areas where we wouldn't really like to see our funds being used. So like any donor finance instrument, we're also looking for some social return for our grants that we provide to you. And we're really looking at one of three types of impact. One is to obviously increase the volume of finance available to SMEs. The other is to increase in the number of SMEs that have access to formal financial products. And the third is an increase or protection of jobs that have been created by SMEs that access new financial products. So here, means that the crisis is likely to have an impact on jobs and job creation. And if your project can help reduce that impact and allow companies to continue functioning, then that is something that we see as a very strong positive. So the application process for the financial outreach window is slightly different from other approaches that we've taken on the MICF. Effectively, you will have until the 22nd of June to inform us whether you will be submitting a bid with an intention to bid document. It's basically a letter which tells us what your project is and gives us a sense of what you want to achieve. But before this, you should already engage with us and discuss your idea and allow us to have an interaction with you. So we encourage you to contact us, and details of that and frequently asked questions are available on our website, www.micf.mw. Once you have indicated your intention to bid, then you have until the 24th of July to develop a full proposal. At the same time here, you will be interacting with the fund management team, but we'll also be doing a due diligence on your business. After the 24th of July, the investment panel will sit and make a decision on which proposals should be taken to contracting. The contracting process does take a little bit of time because everyone needs to be clear on the milestones and comfortable with them, comfortable with the social development objectives that we're trying to reach, and then comfortable to reach an agreement. We have a very fast turnaround for this process, and we expect that to be concluded by the 21st of September. So the second window that we have opened for this launch is the Economic Resilience and Recovery window, which is financed by the German Cooperation Program in Malawi through KfW and UNDP. The window is open to all businesses who are registered to operate in Malawi, as long as they can meet the eligibility criteria that is set for this window, and you can find that on www.micf.mw. And let's go through into the challenges right now. So I won't talk and read out each of these challenges in detail, but the first one, in terms of strengthening key supporting functions of value chains, is primarily about logistics, distribution, and last mile delivery. And it's trying to make sure that domestic value chains and supply chains operate even with social distancing measures in place. The second challenge is a more complex one. It's looking at what can producers leverage to scale and grow products which are likely to experience supply shortages, but which there is a potential for future exports and future markets. So it's not just a short term opportunistic delve into a market and then withdraw, it's continuing that into the future. For those who are in personal protective equipment and medical supplies, UNDP, through its global program with Engineers Without Borders, can also provide additional technical assistance. And the final one is looking at technology-based solutions for tracking both the movement of goods, the management of supply chains, aggregation, traceability. How can we use technology in an effective way to deliver the outcomes that we need? The total amount of grants awarded for an individual project is between 200,000 and 500,000 US dollars. Again, given the current situation, MICF will contribute 70% of the total value of the project. The applicant is expected to provide 30%, but this could be a combination of cash and in-kind contributions. And the projects are expected to last for 30 months. So as we've talked before, for this window, there are very specific social impacts that we're looking for beyond the direct impact for you as a business. So it's about maintaining or providing additional revenues to companies within your direct supply chain. So it's about, can they benefit from this project? Can they be supported in this time of crisis through this project? It's also about ensuring that jobs are both retained and potentially looking at new permanent jobs or part-time jobs which can be created. And it's also about what can we do to our final end producers, and often they are farmers or agro-processors, and looking at what additional incomes to the poor Malawians can this project provide. So the application process for this window is slightly different. It requires you to fill in a project concept note, which is available on our website at www.micf.mw. And you need to submit that fairly quickly by the 30th of June. So we strongly encourage you, as I've said before, to engage with the fund management team as soon as possible to discuss your ideas and see if they fit the challenges, and to try and hone some of the specific social impacts that we're looking at. After the 30th of June, the MICF investment panel will look at all the concept notes and decide which ones go through to a full proposal. At this stage, we will have interaction with you again to explain what is required from a full proposal. We'll also expect to engage with you and ask you questions and discuss your proposal in more detail. And as in the financial outreach window, we will undertake a due diligence of your company. The due diligence that we undertake and the full proposal that you submit will be then sent to the MICF investment panel after the 17th of August. From there, they will decide again which of the grantees are selected for contract. The contract negotiation stage is going to require, as in the previous ones, a discussion and agreement of the milestones, a discussion and agreement of what will trigger a milestone payment, and as well as what is the finance available with a particular milestone payment. and then an agreement on the overall contract. We expect the whole process and you to start implementing your project by the latest by the 23rd of October. So just to recap, what is a concept note? It must be led by a private sector firm, but implementation can be supported by others from NGOs and other non-profit organizations, even other firms as well. But it must be, the lead firm must be a private sector organization. As I emphasized before, the MICF is not for those on high on ambition, but don't really have the capacity to implement their project. So we're looking for people to demonstrate that they can deliver what they say they're going to do. A minimum contribution of 30% of total project costs. And remember that you must think about what are the benefits outside of your company that will benefit from this MICF grant. So the poor in Malawi and the SME supply chain partners that you're going to work with. Ideally, we want you to think about what are the processes, business models, outreach models, which are different and which can be commercially sustainable. The key is that it has to be commercially sustainable in the long term. And as I said before, Engineers Without Borders and UNDP's Technology Access Platform are providing support for those in medical and personal protective equipment sectors who need additional technical and advisory support prior to submission of their concept notes. So as I said before, should you pass the project concept note hurdle, then you will be required to write a full proposal. Our team, the MICF team based in Malawi, can provide you guidance, but unfortunately we cannot write your proposal. You will undergo a quite detailed due diligence process. You will have to provide us with financial information, which we will treat in the strictest confidence. And the investment panel will review both your full proposals and the due diligence report that we have produced. Key is that please engage with us throughout this process. Those companies which have been successful in the past have had a strong engagement with the fund managers through this process, because ultimately we do not make the decision, but we can give you a lot of feedback about your ideas and perhaps idea areas where perhaps strengthening may be required. So should you be successful in your application, we go through to the contracting process. The contracting process is really, really important because it's important for everybody to understand what the milestones are and what will trigger payment. They will be detailed and specific for your project. They will be objectively verifiable. We will verify whether you have reached the milestone. And we will also verify expenditure to make sure that that milestone has been met. It is the key guiding document, the contract, for implementation of the grant. Please remember that payments are made upon achievement of milestones. We do not give any forward grant financing. And implementation can be a maximum of 30 months. So thank you again for your attention. All the information that I've discussed is available on our website, www.micf.mw. Please look at it, please talk to us, and we wish you all the very best of success in your application.